In 1968, 8 mice were placed inside a perfect world, 4 males, 4 females. They had unlimited food, unlimited water, a clean home, perfect temperature, no predators, no disease, no danger. It was not a cage designed to punish them. It was built to save them from everything nature had ever used to kill them. And for a while, it worked. The mice explored. They slept. They ate. They reproduced. The world was safe. Maybe too safe. Because 5 years later, every single mouse inside was dead. Not from starvation, not from infection, not from poison, not from old enemies, not from anything a doctor could easily name. The food was still there. The water was still there. The shelter was still there. But the society was gone. And the most disturbing part is this. They stopped living long before they died. This was Universe 25, a real experiment created by an American scientist named John B. Calhoun. Calhoun was obsessed with one terrifying question: what happens to a society when all the outside problems disappear? For thousands of years, animals survived by fighting the world. They searched for food, they escaped predators, they protected territory, they raised young, they competed, they migrated, they struggled. But Calhoun wanted to know what would happen if the struggle was removed, if survival became automatic, if every need was met. Would life become peaceful? Would the animals become happier? Would society become perfect? Or would something hidden inside the social system begin to rot? To find out, he built a world. It was small, controlled, and perfectly supplied. A square enclosure with nesting spaces stacked along the walls like tiny apartments. There were ramps, tunnels, feeding stations, water bottles, clean bedding, protected corners. Everything was arranged so the mice would never have to fight nature again. No winter would come, no predator would enter, no food shortage would happen, no thirst would threaten them. From the outside, it looked like paradise. But paradise has one problem. If nothing can kill you from the outside, then the danger has to come from inside. On day 1, Calhoun placed the 8 mice inside, and then he watched. At first, the colony behaved normally. The mice explored the enclosure. They learned where the food was. They chose nesting areas. They formed early social patterns. Nothing looked strange. Nothing looked broken. There was only silence, movement, and the beginning of a new world. Then the babies came. The first litters were born, and Universe 25 began to grow. The population increased quickly. More mice filled the apartments. More bodies moved through the tunnels. More young survived because there was no hunger, no cold, and no predators to remove them. To a scientist watching from above, this could have looked like success. A small population becoming a thriving colony. Proof that abundance works. Proof that safety creates life. Proof that paradise can exist. But that is how the experiment tricks you. Because the first stage of collapse often looks exactly like growth. More bodies, more movement, more activity, more noise. But deep inside the system, pressure was building. Not physical pressure, social pressure, because in nature, when a colony grows too large, some animals leave. Young males move away, new territory is found, new groups begin, social stress spreads outward. But inside Universe 25, there was nowhere to go. No forest beyond the walls, no new land, no empty future, no escape. The enclosure had enough food, but it did not have enough meaning. That difference destroyed everything. As the population grew, the older mice had already taken the best spaces. The strongest males controlled territories, the mothers tried to protect nests. The young grew up surrounded by bodies but without a clear path into adult life. They were born into a world where every role seemed already occupied, and slowly the young males began to change. Some of them stopped trying. They did not fight for territory. They did not court females. They did not defend anything. They did not build any social position. They drifted into the center of the enclosure. They gathered in groups. They ate. They slept. They waited. Sometimes other mice attacked them, and instead of fighting back, they simply absorbed it. A mouse would be bitten, scratched, pushed away. Then it would stand up, walk a short distance, and lie down again. It was not patience. It was not peace. It was the beginning of surrender. But another group of males changed in the opposite direction. They became restless, aggressive, unstable. They moved through the colony like broken signals. They invaded nests. They attacked without purpose. They disrupted mating. They ignored normal boundaries. In a healthy animal society, violence has rules. There is warning. There is dominance. There is retreat. There is territory. There is a reason. But here, the rules were dissolving. The violence was no longer building order. It was proof that order was gone. Then the females began to break. Some climbed to the highest nesting areas and isolated themselves. They avoided males. They stopped reproducing. They lived alone above the chaos. Others still tried to raise young, but now the colony around them had become unpredictable. Males no longer protected territory the way they once had. Nests were invaded, bodies crowded the pathways, stress never stopped. Mothers had to defend their babies alone, and under constant pressure. Some mothers failed. They abandoned pups. They misplaced them. They stopped caring for them. Some attacked their own young. The most protected world ever built for mice became a place where motherhood itself began to collapse. That is when Universe 25 stopped being a population experiment. It became a nightmare because nothing outside the colony was attacking them. The food was still full, the water was still clean, the shelter was still safe, but the relationships were dying. And when relationships die inside a social species, the body can keep breathing, while the society is already dead. Calhoun called one part of this disaster the behavioral sink. It was not just overcrowding, it was a kind of social gravity. The mice were pulled into destructive patterns by the density of their own world. One of the strangest signs appeared around food. There were multiple feeding areas, food was available, but the mice began crowding around certain feeders, even when other feeders were open. They were no longer simply eating because they were hungry. They were eating where other mice were eating. The crowd became part of the behavior. An empty feeder, even full of food, became almost meaningless if no other mice were there. Think about that. Even the act of eating had become social confusion. They had what they needed, but they no longer knew how to live with it. Then came the generation that made Universe 25 famous. Calhoun called them the beautiful ones. And at first, that name sounds almost hopeful, because these mice looked perfect. Their fur was clean, their bodies were healthy, they had no scars, they were not injured, they did not fight. If you looked only at their appearance, you might think they were the best adapted mice in the colony. But they were the most terrifying, because they did almost nothing. They did not fight, they did not mate, they did not raise young, they did not defend territory, they did not participate in the society around them. They ate, they slept, they groomed themselves. That was their life. They were clean, because they never entered conflict. They were healthy because they avoided everything difficult. They looked alive. But as members of a species, they had already disappeared. The beautiful ones are the reason this experiment still feels disturbing today, because they do not look like victims. They look comfortable. They look untouched. They look like nothing is wrong. And that is exactly what makes them frightening. They are not destroyed by pain. They are destroyed by disconnection, a living body with no role, a clean face with no future, a creature surviving but no longer participating in life. And once a generation like that appears, the end has already begun. The colony may still be moving. The food may still be there. The world may still look functional, but the future has quietly switched off. Universe 25 eventually reached its peak. More than 2,000 mice lived inside. But after that, the population stopped rising, births declined, parenting collapsed, social behavior deteriorated, reproduction faded. Then came the most important moment in the entire experiment. The last successful conception happened, not the last death, the last beginning. After that, no new future entered the world. The colony continued for a while. The mice still moved through the enclosure. They still ate. They still slept. They still groomed. They still occupied space. But the society was already dead. It was only waiting for the bodies to catch up. One by one, the mice aged. One by one, they died. No children replaced them. No new generation rose behind them. The perfect world became quieter. The tunnels emptied. The apartments emptied. The feeders stayed full. And finally, the last mouse died. Imagine that final scene. A clean enclosure. Food still available. Water still untouched. No predator. No disease. No starvation. Nothing left alive. The world had not failed because it became too harsh. It failed because it became hollow. For decades, people used this experiment as a simple warning. They said it proved that comfort destroys life. They said it proved that abundance makes creatures weak. They said it was a prophecy about cities, modern society, luxury, technology, and the future of humanity. But that is too simple. Comfort alone did not kill Universe 25. The mice did not die because they had food. They died because the structure of meaning disappeared. That is the darker lesson. In the beginning, every mouse had a place. Some explored, some defended, some reproduced, some protected nests, some competed, some raised young. But as the colony grew, more and more mice were born into a world where there was no meaningful position left for them. No territory to claim, no responsibility to inherit, no role to grow into, no reason to become strong, no way to matter. When a young male had nowhere to go, he either became passive or chaotic. When a mother had no support, she collapsed under pressure. When a generation grew up without stable social models, it did not become the future, it became the ending. The food never ran out. The water never ran out. What ran out was purpose. And that is why this experiment still haunts people, because humans are not mice, but humans also need more than comfort. We need more than food, more than shelter, more than entertainment, more than safety. We need a reason to be needed. A person can survive without purpose for a while, but slowly, something begins to disappear. First motivation, then connection, then courage, then the desire to build a future. Modern life gives many people things ancient humans could never imagine. Warm rooms, endless food, instant entertainment, artificial light, screens, noise, information, comfort. But comfort does not automatically create meaning. You can have everything around you and still feel like nothing inside you has a place to go. You can be surrounded by millions of people and feel socially invisible. You can be alive every day and still feel like your life has no role in the larger story. That is why Universe 25 is not scary, because it shows mice dying. It is scary because it shows a society ending while the lights are still on. No explosion, no apocalypse, no monster. Just a slow disappearance of purpose. The mothers stop mothering, the fighters stop fighting, the young stop becoming adults, the beautiful ones stop participating, and the system continues empty. But Calhoun was not only warning about doom. That part is often forgotten. He did not simply believe collapse was unavoidable. He believed the answer was not just more physical space, it was new conceptual space, new roles, new tasks, new identities, new responsibilities, new ways for individuals to matter. In other words, a society survives not because it becomes more comfortable, but because it keeps creating meaningful places for people to stand. A future cannot be built only with food and walls. It needs purpose. It needs challenge. It needs responsibility. It needs connection. It needs someone to say, "You are needed here." Universe 25 failed because it gave life everything except a reason to continue. And maybe that is the real warning. Not that comfort is evil, not that abundance is dangerous by itself, but that a world can look perfect from the outside while quietly removing the very things that make life feel alive. The mice had no choice. They could not leave. They could not redesign the system. They could not ask what was happening. They could not create new meaning. They were